babies. That is not bullshit. It's true.
The actor behind the most famous portrayal of Jesus, Jim Caviezel, isn't reciting a script. He's exposing a reality far more sinister.
She believed consumption was transformation, that youth could be taken in, that vitality could be absorbed. She talked about ancient rites, about elites throughout history who understood what the masses didn't. There was a separate kitchen on her property, stainless steel, private entrance, no security cameras inside.
The polished image of Hollywood's queen of kindness is officially disintegrating, and the most devastating blow is coming from inside her own home. Portia de Rossi isn't just walking away from her 20-year marriage to Ellen DeGeneres. She's reportedly stepping into a room with investigators to dismantle a legacy built on secrets. This feels different from the usual celebrity gossip because it touches on the darkest corners of the industry, linking the comedian's name to the Jeffrey Epstein files and a hidden infrastructure that goes far beyond Hollywood parties. The whispers now suggest that Portia witnessed a reality so disturbing, involving a secret kitchen and suspicious private travel, that she could no longer remain silent. It makes you look at Ellen's career through a much colder lens. At 66, her refusal to age like a normal person was always framed as a mix of great genes and expensive lasers. But the narrative is shifting towards something far more visceral and predatory. We're hearing allegations of youth transference, a concept that suggests vitality isn't just maintained, it's extracted. It's in stomach-turning thought, but if the sources are right, Portia saw the mechanics of this consumption firsthand. This isn't just about a fall from grace, it's about a potential connection to missing children and ritualistic practices that the elite have used to stay at the top. When you see Ellen's name appearing multiple times in the Epstein logs, you have to ask what she was really buying with all that influence. If Portia is truly ready to blow the lid off this, we aren't just looking at the end of a talk show host. We're looking at the exposure of a system that treats human life as a resource. The Be Kind mantra has never felt more hollow than it does right now as this nightmare unfolds.
Ellen DeGeneres is named in the Epstein documents, and that part is real. Her name appears in the broader index of over 300 high-profile individuals that show up across the investigative materials. Flight logs, communications, third-party interviews, peripheral records.
Let's be honest. Appearing in a federal investigative file doesn't immediately hand down a conviction, but it certainly places you within the inner orbit of a monster. When your names surface alongside Jeffrey Epstein, the most notorious child trafficker of our era, the coincidence defense starts to feel incredibly thin. This wasn't just a vacation spot for the elite, and it was a clinical site for depravity. Fresh reports from those brave enough to speak to investigators suggest the island hosted treatments that defy conventional understanding of human rights. We are talking about the alleged extraction of biological materials from children, a literal theft of youth intended to fuel the vitality of the wealthy monsters funding these operations. It is a stomach-turning concept, using the very life force of the vulnerable as a high-end skincare regimen. Now, look at Ellen DeGeneres through that chilling lens. She built a billion-dollar empire on the Be Kind brand while seemingly defying the laws of biology, staying unnaturally youthful for decades. When you anchor her timeless look to her recurring presence in the Epstein logs, the picture turns dark very quickly. Portia de Rossi entered this world in 2004, stepping into what the public saw as a progressive fairy tale. They were the gold standard for Hollywood couples, inseparable and glowing at every red carpet event. However, sources close to Portia suggest the domestic reality was a psychological minefield. Very early on, Portia allegedly noticed a pattern of behavior that didn't fit the daytime TV persona. There were the anonymous visitors slipping into their private estate under the cover of darkness and unmarked deliveries that arrived at 3 a.m., which Ellen insisted on handling herself. Most unsettling was the high turnover of private chefs who were suddenly fired without cause, and a specific kitchen area that remained off limits. It paints a picture of a woman not just protecting her privacy, but managing a supply chain for something the rest of the world wasn't supposed to see. If Portia is finally talking, the perfect marriage was actually a front row seat to a horror story.
There was a separate kitchen on her property, stainless steel, private entrance, no security cameras inside.
Consider the sheer absurdity of a billionaire hiring world-class culinary talent only to ban them from the stove during the most critical part of the meal. Why would a woman like Ellen DeGeneres, who has every luxury at her fingertips, insist on personally handling specific ingredients? Even more suspicious is the existence of a secondary, off-the-grid kitchen intentionally stripped of all surveillance. Witnesses from these high society gatherings at her estate suggest the secrecy wasn't about a family recipe, it was about untraceable consumption. But they claim the items being prepared were so illicit that no staff member could be allowed to testify to their existence. The breaking point allegedly came in late 2019 when Portia accidentally interrupted one of these private sessions. The sight was reportedly incomprehensible at first. A domestic scene turned into something clinical and grotesque. When she finally confronted Ellen, the explanation she received wasn't just defensive. It was a cold, soul-crushing revelation of what it truly costs to stay forever young.
She believed consumption was transformation, that youth could be taken in, that vitality could be absorbed. She talked about ancient rites, about elites throughout history who understood what the masses didn't.
We aren't talking about some fleeting Hollywood diet or a trendy juice cleanse. When Ellen spoke of these traditions, she was referencing an ancient, ghastly lineage of behavior passed down through the most powerful dynasties in history. According to those close to the situation, Portia de Rossi was absolutely paralyzed by the realization of what she had married into. This is where the dark road leads straight back to the Epstein investigation. While the world focused on the depraved parties, the flight logs from 2005 to 2015 tell a much more clinical story. Sources familiar with these documents have linked Ellen's name to at least 2 specific excursions to Little St. James, but the motive wasn't social. It was medicinal. Witnesses have begun describing a sophisticated medical wing hidden on that island. This wasn't a standard clinic. It was an elite, off-the-books laboratory packed with high-end extraction gear and specialized refrigeration. The medical staff there weren't nurses. They were high-priced specialists bought with enough silence money to ensure their secrets died with them. While the mainstream scientific world is now tentatively exploring things like plasma transfusions and stem cell protocols as legitimate anti-aging tools, what was happening on Epstein's soil was the unregulated, black market nightmare of that research. It's the version of science that bypasses ethics boards and human rights entirely. The reality is that young blood research isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. Silicon Valley moguls are openly pouring billions into startups that study life extension through plasma. The science is proven. The horror lies in the sourcing. On Epstein Island, there were no voluntary donors or signed consent forms. Witnesses allege the material was harvested from trafficked children, young victims brought to the island specifically for their biological resources. In the most haunting accounts, these children were treated as nothing more than organic batteries for the elite, and many of them simply vanished after their contribution was complete. This is the heavy, blood-soaked price of the vitality Ellen allegedly sought, and it's exactly what Portia is reportedly ready to expose to the world.
Once you shared that secret, whatever you believed you'd consumed, you are bound to the group. No one betrays a circle that can destroy them.
55,000 children had crossed the border this last year and disappeared. Where did they disappear?
We are staring at a void where 85,000 children have simply evaporated from the system. No paper trails, no federal accountability, and zero answers from the architects of our society. It is chilling to realize that Ellen DeGeneres' name is etched into the records of the very man whose island likely holds the keys to these disappearances. However, the most genius and terrifying part of this global network isn't the kidnapping. It's the psychological branding of the participants. This is an engineered trap designed to ensure total silence through forced complicity. If you think you just blow the whistle, you don't understand how the initiation works. Imagine being invited to an ultra-exclusive dinner at a sprawling estate, surrounded by icons like Oprah or Ellen. You're offered a wellness boost or a rare vitality treatment that the common public can't access. You trust the room, so you partake. It's only afterward that the true nature of what you consumed is revealed to you. In that heartbeat, you lose your voice forever. To expose the monsters in that room is to admit that you are now one of them. You aren't just a guest anymore. The moment you participate in the ritual, you become a co-conspirator, bound by a secret that would destroy your life if it ever went public.
Crash wasn't random. It was a hit to shut her up. And the poison started way before, in her relationship with Ellen.
The leverage used to keep Portia de Rossi silent for nearly 2 decades wasn't based on physical threats or traditional intimidation. It was the psychological weight of shared culpability. But here is the explosive twist. Sources now indicate that Portia allegedly refused to participate in the treatments altogether. That act of defiance created an irreparable rift in the marriage, because in these elite circles, if you aren't consuming, you are a liability. Portia broke the golden rule of the cult-like inner sanctum, and that makes her the most dangerous witness Ellen has ever faced. We've seen this pattern of silencing before, and the history of those who tried to speak out is genuinely haunting. Look at Anne Heche, Ellen's high-profile partner from the late 90s. They were the industry's it couple. But after their split, Heche spent years privately grappling with the horrors she had seen behind the curtain. At the time of her death, she was reportedly finalizing a documentary titled Children of the Machine, a project aimed directly at the heart of Hollywood's child trafficking infrastructure. She was ready to name names and expose the truth. Then, in August 2022, her life ended in a violent, fiery car wreck in Los Angeles. It's a chilling reminder of the cost of defiance in a world that demands total submission.
You know they eat babies. That is not bullshit. It's true.
To be absolutely clear, we aren't presenting these as verified legal convictions. Rather, we are examining the terrifying consistency of the claims made by those in Anne Heche's inner circle. What gives their testimony such chilling weight is the unmistakable pattern of silence that follows anyone who touches this third rail. Anne isn't an isolated case in this lethal network. Look at the architect himself, Jeffrey Epstein. Despite being the most high-profile prisoner in the world, his suicide occurred after his cellmate was conveniently moved and the surveillance cameras simultaneously failed. The man who held the keys to the kingdom's darkest closets was silenced before he could utter a single name. When you get too close to this son, you don't just face a libel suit or a PR crisis. You simply cease to exist. This is the exact brand of existential dread that reportedly has Portia de Rossi living in fear for her life right now. It's a warning Jim Caviezel has been screaming into the void for years, and long before the Epstein logs became public knowledge. During the production of Sound of Freedom, he witnessed the industry's desperate attempt to bury the reality of child exploitation. Major players like Rupert Murdoch and the big Hollywood studios were explicitly warned. If you touch this subject, your career has a 3-year expiration date. The industry's gatekeepers were ordered to blackball a film about saving children. The reason is as simple as it is sick. The villains in that story are the same people writing the checks for the studios, the same ones hosting these grotesque private dinners, and the same names currently buried in the Epstein files.
Just go to bed, wear white, just wear everything is white, drink the water, take the earth.
Jim Caviezel didn't hide behind metaphors or industry jargon. He spoke with a terrifying, blunt clarity. They eat babies. Whether you take that as a literal ritual or a symbolic consumption of the innocent, the underlying message is identical. The elite at the peak of this hierarchy are sustaining their own power and vitality by preying on the young, an exploitation involving hundreds, potentially thousands of victims. Portia de Rossi's reported defection might be the first domino to fall in a massive chain reaction, because this rot extends far beyond Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen is merely one artery in a vast, interconnected network. Consider Oprah Winfrey, whose name surfaces in the Epstein records no fewer than 5 times. This is the same Oprah who founded a girls' school in South Africa, only to have a staff member arrested on 14 counts of indecent acts against minors. That nightmare ended in a quiet, closed-door settlement with zero public accountability. From her decades-long promotion of Harvey Weinstein to her elevation of John of God, the Brazilian healer later convicted of serial predatory behavior, a disturbing pattern of proximity to abusers emerges. If Portia is truly ready to talk, the queen of media might find her own empire caught in the same devastating blast radius as Ellen's.
I know that the saints in heaven wish to be on this earth right now because there are far more people on this earth than there's ever been. And there are far more souls to save right now than there ever has ever been.
The blueprint for these high-level predators is chillingly consistent. Achieve proximity to power, provide public validation for other abusers, maintain a wall of silence, and then aggressively rebrand. Ellen DeGeneres mastered this cycle, hiding behind a carefully curated persona of dancing and daytime kindness. Yet, according to emerging witness testimony, much that cheerful exterior masked a participant in rituals designed to weld the elite together through shared stomach-turning acts. The logic is simple but effective. Once you've partaken in the unthinkable, you are shackled to the group. You don't betray a circle that holds the power to erase your existence. However, Portia de Rossi is reportedly prepared to shatter that code of silence. The question is, why break cover now? Sources suggest Portia reached a psychological breaking point, realizing that her silence wasn't a shield. It was an admission of guilt. She has allegedly initiated contact with federal investigators tied to the expanding Epstein files, providing granular details about exclusive gatherings, suspicious travel logs, and the specific unmonitored activities occurring in that secret kitchen. She isn't just targeting her spouse. She is reportedly naming names that include Oprah, Diddy, and a roster of A-listers whose public images are currently teetering on the edge of total annihilation. We are likely standing at the threshold of a systemic collapse, reminiscent of the Harvey Weinstein fallout, where one brave whistleblower triggers the complete unraveling of a global criminal empire. Jim Caviezel is convinced that we have reached a definitive hinge point in human history, a moment where the shadows are finally being forced to retreat. The truth, no matter how visceral or terrifying, is surfacing, and Portia de Rossi may very well be the final catalyst. Once she officially goes on record to detail the reality of her marriage, the specifics of Ellen's alleged admissions, like in the clinical horrors of Epstein Island, the entire global house of cards will come crashing down. The elite circles that have functioned as a mutual protection society for decades are losing their grip. This complicity mechanism, which relies on everyone being equally dirty, fails the second an insider prioritizes their soul over self-preservation. According to those watching the case, Portia has finally made that heavy, historic choice. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look at the mounting evidence. Ellen DeGeneres' name doesn't just appear once in the Epstein files. It's a recurring entry. Portia has reportedly described an environment where Ellen participated in rituals centered on consumption, grotesque acts intended to steal youth and bind a secret society through shared, irreversible guilt. Meant on her sprawling estate, Ellen allegedly maintained a private, camera-free kitchen where she personally handled preparations that no staff member was permitted to witness. Portia reportedly saw these preparations firsthand, and her refusal to partake was the line in the sand that fractured their decades-long union. This isn't just theory. We've seen the price of defiance before. Aunt Hesha, Ellen's former partner, was reportedly finalizing a documentary titled Children of the Machine to expose these exact Hollywood trafficking networks before her suspicious, fiery death in 2022. Caviezel has spent years screaming that the powerful are consuming the vulnerable to stay at the top. Now, with Portia allegedly talking to federal investigators, the be kind era is over, and the era of reckoning has finally arrived. D word.
Is just the beginning of this whole thing. It's an 8-armed octopus, and if you take just out, that arm will grow back.
Portia de Rossi's alleged decision to cooperate doesn't just put Ellen in the crosshairs, it targets the very crown of a global shadow empire. We are talking about the architects of the Epstein network, individuals who treated human life as a commodity and built a vast infrastructure on the horrific belief that vitality could be harvested from the innocent. This system relied on the arrogance that extreme power provides permanent immunity from the law. However, if these reports are accurate, that immunity is expiring. While the initial Epstein files crack the door open, Portia's detailed testimony could be the avalanche that finally buries the elite. If Jim Caviezel's long-standing warnings are correct, she is merely the first of thousands ready to break their silence. This isn't a closing chapter. It's the beginning of a reckoning that will dismantle Hollywood's very foundation.